Learner number 1 is our California king snake Grogu. And for those of you who are always questioning, how do I do training and choice-based handling with a top opening enclosure? It's very simple. The snakes can very easily learn how to climb up the top and out the opening of the top opening enclosures onto a station or something else. Just make sure that you have plenty of things that you're filling the space with from the bottom of the enclosure all the way up to the top. Here's Grogu during repetition 2 during the same session. He shifted out during repetition 1, and during repetition 2, he is easily shifting back in. I want to remind everyone that you should be cleaning your training equipment in between learners. I use rescue wipes, which are an accelerated hydrogen peroxide product. You need to be cleaning your targets or any other training equipment, as well as your feeding tongs in between the different snakes. This is Tau Seti. He is our super dwarf reticulated python from Reach Out Reptiles. He's not training tonight, so why is he in this video? This is TC sitting on his scale station. I usually store this outside of his enclosure, or at least in this room. And he wanted out of his enclosure, and as he usually does, he climbs onto the scale station, and he spends a lot of time just sitting here. And I learned tonight that the other snakes do not seem to like TC's scent, or they don't like the scale station since TC has been spending so much time on it. Because 8 out of 9 snakes that I asked to shift out onto the scale station wouldn't do it tonight. They very readily oriented towards the target and started to quickly shift out of the enclosure. And they came right up to the scale station. And as soon as they started to smell it, they all stopped, hesitated, paused, and recoiled and backed up and went back into their enclosures. Who was the one snake out of 9 that did shift out onto the scale station without hesitation? It's Merlin, of course. He is always a star at home. Most of his training sessions go very, very well. He actually started shifting himself out onto the scale station with no hesitation at all before I was even ready for him. And then he exhibited a lot of exuberance during the session. That was a little bit unusual. Merlin seldom, if ever, strikes at the target. So I'm not really sure why he struck at the target there, why he did seem a little bit more aroused during this session. He had a little bit more of excited energy going on. So maybe the smells from Tau Seti were affecting him. If they were impacting him, it wasn't impacting him enough that it prevented him from shifting out. He just seemed to be more highly aroused, a little bit more reactive than normal when we were initially doing the activity. But he settled down fine like he always does, and he completed his shifting behavior. He paused at the target at the end like he's supposed to do, and I delivered his reinforcement. And then I was able to go ahead and get a weight on him. And because the scale automatically shuts off after a certain amount of time, I have to lift the station off the scale, turn the scale back on, and then set the station back on the scale in order to get a weight. And I know exactly how much the rodent weighs. I know exactly how much the scale station weighs. So I can just subtract that from the total weight I'm getting here, and I can figure out what Merlin's weight is. After Merlin finished his meal, he shifted back into his enclosure. This is something else he usually does without any issues whatsoever. And the sliding doors on his enclosure make it a lot easier for shifting him in and out, especially for shifting him back in, because I'm able to open them to where the doors are in the center. So there's an opening on both ends. And I'm able to stick the target through one end and have him shift into the other end and then out the end where the target is so that his whole body makes it back into his enclosure. I hate sliding doors for other reasons, mainly because many of the snakes are able to push their way out between the sliding doors. And lots of debris gets caught in the tracks and it makes it difficult to clean. I really like the sliding doors for this reason, because when I'm doing shift training and I'm shifting them in and out, being able to position the doors in different spots really makes it easy. If you're considering an enclosure with sliding doors, I will say that glass doors have less give in them. It's a lot more difficult for the snakes to push out between sliding glass doors than sliding acrylic or plastic or plexiglass doors. So they're going to be more secure. And then if you put edge guards on the edges of the sliding doors, it also makes it more secure. We're going to finish up with a learner named Castiel. He is a 100% hypomelanistic stonewashed Brettles python. I was going to have him shift out of that paper towel roll. He was all coiled up in that paper towel roll when I started getting everything ready. But by the time I got back over there and opened the door and was ready to do the training session, he was already out of the paper towel roll and sitting on his substrate guard right up against the door. So I had to come up with something for him to do on the fly. I just asked him to shift across his substrate guard, across his water dish, and onto a random item that I had sitting on a standing desk that's adjacent to his enclosure. And it's just a cardboard mailing tube that has a poster in it. And I found it really interesting that he shifted out onto this random item that we've never practiced with before without any real hesitation. And 8 of the 9 snakes that I asked to shift out onto the scale station, which they've all been on before, didn't want to do that this evening. And I hadn't cleaned it at all prior to asking them to shift. And I really am wondering if it's because TC spends so much time on it that they were bothered by his smell. This is a good opportunity to remind you that the main reason I started shift training many years ago was as an easy, stress-free way to get the snakes to come out of their enclosure voluntarily so that I could clean and do enclosure maintenance. And they were occupied eating or otherwise engaged in some activity where they remained comfortable and relaxed. And then I'm able to clean, I'm able to refresh the waters and do what I need to do. And then the snake shifts back in. Tonight, while he was out on his poster tube, I was able to touch him a little bit and start initiating some touch training. I was able to completely remove his humid hide and his hide that sits on top of his humid hide and clean all that and refresh the moss, clean his water, replace that. It gave me an opportunity to complete all of the tasks that I needed to complete while he was out. I was able to clean his acrylic doors, his substrate guard, clean the ledge, and just get anything and everything done that I needed to as far as enclosure cleaning and maintenance. And then he shifted back in. Well, he shifted mostly back in, and I ended up moving the poster tube so that he would go ahead and climb back in the rest of the way. Sometimes what happens is they find the freedom to be out of their enclosure so reinforcing, they're not always as anxious to go back in as they were to come out.